Hey Extension friends, Nate Birt here, NTAE Key Informant. So in today's video, what I want to do is spend just a few minutes talking about organizing chaos. Tell me if you've ever been in a situation where you were overwhelmed with the volume of information, the complexity of the process, the number of people who are coming to you demanding answers or guidance on a specific situation, and in some ways you just shut down because the human brain can only sort of hold so many things together at once before it sort of loses track. We tend to become emotional. Our neurons are firing all kinds of directions when we get overloaded with information. That often feels like chaos. And so the goal of today's video is to really encourage you with a specific set of steps that you can take whenever you start to get overloaded in order to regain your mental faculties, so to speak, to really use biology to your advantage, get oxygen flowing again, get the space that you need to gain clarity, and then make a decision on how to move forward. So, again, I suspect, this actually happened to me recently as I was asked to help organize from a series of virtual events where we had, dozens or certainly multiple individuals who are contributing in breakout sessions, giving feedback on specific documents, trying to organize all of those details in a way that is comprehensive, in a way that would help the groups that had developed those documents to figure out how to revise them, which feedback do we accept, which ones do we need to discuss further, how do we start to even begin to unwrap this? And so I used my brain paired with a little bit of AI magic to start that process. But as I thought about, okay, how did I go from being overloaded to having a path forward, I sort of thought through these are the steps that I took, and working in collaboration with other extension colleagues to make those moves. So let me talk you through what those steps look like. Okay, so I sort of like this visual on the page of all these wires sort of crisscrossing. I am not an electrician, but anytime I've had to look at wires and, even do something as basic as like wiring in a new light fixture, I start to get like sort of hot. My face starts to turn red, or at least I imagine it is, right? My heart starts to pump because it's like I don't want to make a wrong move that's either going to electrocute someone or start a fire, right? And in a similar way, when it comes to your work in extension, it may not be sort of life or death, hopefully, when it comes to figuring out how to sort out chaotic information or, processes or whatever the case might be. But it can feel that way nonetheless. It sort of initiates our fight or flight response. So the first thing I want to encourage you to do is just take a step back and take a breath. Like whenever you start to get overloaded, if you are in a group of people or you're just like, you don't even know where to begin, just ask for a moment, either physically step away, mentally just say, look, can we push pause on this and revisit it in a little bit? I don't quite know what to do and I need some time to think about it. You always have permission to set that boundary, ask for time. Again, maybe the rare exception being if you're literally in the emergency room and you're trying to decide, do we operate or not? Hopefully, short of that, you're able to maybe have a little bit of time to think. And my hope is that if you're in the emergency room, you've done the training and experience necessary to sort of make those intuitive decisions guided by deep experience. Okay, step number 2 is to ask the question, when we've untangled chaos, whether that happens to be a process, a whole bunch of information you're trying to sort out, maybe a program that's very complex, what is the desired outcome, right? Too often we start sort of trying to like dig into the weeds, unpack everything, move things around, start asking a lot of people a lot of different questions, imagining all the possible outputs we could design once we figured out our way through the chaos. But too often that is a ton of busy work for very little outcome, right? Very little impact. And so if you really want to have impact and a positive outcome for the clients that you serve, for your colleagues within extension, again, whatever the context, ask yourself first and define the outcome. And it may be the case that you need to ask your colleagues, like, what is the outcome we're after? Because there may be competing goals, and it's possible you can achieve multiple outcomes with one output or, untangling of chaos. But on the other hand, if you really want to have the highest leverage, the highest possible impact, you may need to land on one specific goal for now, and then revisit other goals you could achieve with other processes and procedures later. But really think about the outcome, right? In my case, the outcome was I needed the chairs, the co-chairs of a working group to have information organized in such a way they could begin to say, yes, we like this, let's incorporate that change. And then either do that themselves, delegate to a committee that would actually be responsible for revising the document. But again, the outcome was not come up with a beautiful looking toolkit that we're going to share with, client group ABC. It was simply, before we ever get to that point, we have to start giving the leaders of this group confidence in the decisions they're making and lay out all of the possible changes that can be made so they can say, yes, no, I'm not sure, let's discuss it further. Okay, so focus on the outcome. That's step number 2. Step number 3 is break the chaos down into components, right? So there may be let's figure out the process by which we even make this decision, right? First, even before that, it's let's figure out what the outcome is. Then it's like, okay, what is the process? That's component number 2. Component number 3 might be, what is the output, right? Is it going to be a spreadsheet? Is it going to be a giant Google Doc? Is it going to be a conversation or like a meeting agenda? Like, what is the output? And then who's doing the work? Who's going to review the work? And then how do we present this to the leaders who are ultimately going to make the decision to get us toward that outcome that we've defined? So again, I've identified like 7 different components, all of which have multiple actions within them, right? I've heard someone describe a project as anything involving 2 or more tasks. I think this is very similar, right? Oftentimes when something feels chaotic, it's because it is essentially a project with individual tasks or buckets of tasks that we have not taken the time or energy to sort of pick apart. And so again, if we can follow these steps and do number 3, break the chaos down into components, we'll have a much better time understanding why we feel so overwhelmed. Again, it's a lot to do, right? And there has to be a certain order, or the output or the outcome is not going to be what anyone desires. It's not going to get us to the goal. So we have to sort of take a step back and break things apart. Number 4, make a plan for understanding, addressing, and tidying up each of those pieces. Again, it's essentially like, if you've ever gone through any sort of formal project management training, effectively that's what we're doing here, is we're sort of saying, okay, what is the plan? Now that we've got these buckets, these components outlined, let's make a plan for each of them. What do we need to understand? What are the key issues to address? And how do we clean it all up so that we're all on the same page about what we learned, what we decided to do, and what's happening next? Number 5, propose 3 paths forward. So rather than just saying, I've figured it out, I've broken it all apart, and now we're going forward, I suspect that more often than not within Extension, you're going to actually be working with others, right? Either with clients, with partners, with other Extension colleagues, with researchers. And so it's important to have several different paths forward for how you could arrive at the outcome you've identified and how you can sort of address one after the other sequentially those buckets, those components. But don't rely just on your own expertise, intuition, opinions. Unless this is truly something you can manage end to end with no outside influence, you really need to think about making a recommendation, thinking through possible paths, evaluating the pros and cons of each of those, and getting some outside input, right? What do you think? Don't give them a sense of where you're leaning. Just say, these are the possible paths based on your experience, because you have skin in the game, so to speak. You're going to be a colleague in this particular effort. If you were sort of making this decision, how would you go about deciding which of these paths might make the most sense now, given the goals we've set? And just see what they say. Be quiet. Listen. Number 6, determine which of the paths to pursue first, right? Once you've gotten that feedback, now you have the opportunity to share sort of what you're leaning, give input to your colleague or other colleagues or partners, or maybe more than one, and then decide which of those paths you're going to pursue first, right? There are multiple options. All of them may have their merits, but pick the one that makes the most sense given the outcome or the goal that you've set. Again, a singular goal or outcome. Not multiple goals, one goal. You can always go revisit other goals later on, but focus on one for now. And then finally, act on faith, right? And trust your experience. So there's a balancing act between, at some point, like, it's going to be uncomfortable no matter what. Hopefully, if you've gone through these steps, you have a little more clarity and confidence. There's a little less fear and more understanding of what needs to happen next. And you also need to trust that, look, you've done hard things before, you can do it again, right? It's not necessarily going to be fun. It might be hard, it might be scary, right? Because you're going to be vulnerable, right? You're going to be putting something together, whether it's a document or a strategy or a recommendation or a resource, and other people are going to be looking at that and engaging it, and you're going to think people are going to judge you. Again, set those things aside, recognize, like, this is hard, and you're capable, right? You've done things like this before. Even if they're not exactly like this, you've done hard things. All right, so as we wrap up today, my call to action to you is, what is the first step you're going to take the next time you're tasked with organizing chaos to get clarity? Again, the first step I recommend is taking a step back and taking a breath. But there may be something else that you need to do or that works best for you in your context, your lived experience, that's going to serve you really well and give you that kind of space that you need. So think about that. I'd love for you to send me a note as to what you're planning to do. You can reach me at nathanbirt@extension.org. Again, thanks so much for your time, and keep doing hard things, uncluttering the chaos, untangling it. You've got this. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.